Welcome everyone to this panel on female entrepreneurship in Asia Pacific. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion on female entrepreneurship today. For this panel, I have the opportunity to speak to three amazing speakers that will share their experiences as and with female entrepreneurs in the Asia Pacific region. Today with me, I have Suhela, Country Program Manager at WeEmpowerAsia at UN Women in India, Shuyin, Partner at Patamar Capital, Co-founder and CEO at the Beacon Fund, and Mint, CEO of EATLAB, Assistant Professor and Leader of Tomorrow by Asia Gen T Leaders. Before we dive deeper into the discussion, I wanted to take a minute to just go over the rationale of why we're holding this panel discussion in the first place. You cannot deny that men and women face different challenges when it comes to launching and running a business. Launching a business always comes with its challenges, especially if you're in an emergent market. However, besides the traditional challenges that entrepreneurs face, women also face additional roadblocks simply because of their gender. Statistically seen, they have fewer opportunities for fundraising and for partnerships. They have to take on approximately 3 times more of the unpaid work compared to their male counterparts. And additionally, they face gender biases and stereotypes when it comes to women in leadership positions. And even beside all those hurdles and hardships, there's a lot of statistics that actually show that startups co-founded or founded by women are significantly better off in terms of financial investment. They achieve higher returns for their investors, and women entrepreneurs also reinvest more of the capital raised into their local communities. Women entrepreneurs also serve as catalysts, meaning that they hire more women into the companies and therefore allowing for more women at the workplace. Female entrepreneurship as a path to more economic, financial, and social independence for women. And unleashing the talent of women entrepreneurs is an effective way to narrow the gender gap that exists in the current labor market. Additionally, it's also a crucial part of sustainable development of any economy. Today, we'll be looking at female entrepreneurship specifically in the Asia Pacific region, and we look at it from various different angles. So that's why I'm very excited to virtually hand over the mic to my panelists, and I will ask them to introduce themselves again and tell us what they're working on.
Great, so I'll start. Hi, my name is Mint Wongviriyawong. I'm a CEO and co-founder of EATLAB. So we built AI as an assisted intelligence to marketing director for restaurants. We're kind of helping them navigate how to do promotion and pricing strategy that would help increase revenue for the restaurants. And at the same time, I am a working mom. I'm pregnant, 6 months old, carrying, and my daughter is 2 years old. Definitely has been like challenges, juggling between the mom guilt and like the managing the company and everything else in between that has pretty much taken up a lot of my headspace. So I'm glad to be joining you guys. At the same time, I teach at university as an assistant professor in artificial intelligence. So that's me.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Shuyin, and I'm based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. So I guess I'm here wearing the investor hat today. I've been investing in this region for the past decade or so, across Southeast Asia, but really focused more on the Mekong region and particularly Vietnam. So we're an impact investor, which means we're investing not just for financial return, but also for social and or environmental impact. And that means we've invested in some fantastic companies across the region, in healthcare, in education, in financial inclusion, and in agriculture. One thing that I've been busy working on during COVID and last year was launching a new fund called the Beacon Fund, which is really dedicated to to better meeting the financing needs of female entrepreneurs in the region. And very delighted to be sharing a bit more about that today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suhela, and I lead the WeEmpowerAsia program at UN Women in India. I am so sorry. Wait. Zaru, okay. Here is my 5-year-old, and I cannot control her. I'm so sorry. Zaru, I'm in a meeting, please. Sorry. I'm so sorry for this. No worries. Okay. My name is Suhela, and I lead the WeEmpowerAsia program at UN Women in India. The program is funded by European Union in 7 countries of Asia, and it really works with the private sector companies to make their policies and practices at the workplace, marketplace, and communities more gender responsive. The program also works with women entrepreneurs to enhance their access to markets and finance, and of course, creating an enabling environment for women entrepreneurs. I so very much look forward to the interactions ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, all of you have very extensive experience in the ecosystem, and I'd love to hear your personal perspective on the current situation of gender equality in the region and whether you see differences between now and let's say 5 years ago. So I would direct this question maybe first to Suhela. As you work with different stakeholders, entrepreneurs, investors, corporates, and on the funding side as well. Could you give us an overview of how you've seen the environment change or adapt over the past few years?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. So if you look at the statistics, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. You know, East Asia and the Pacific is the only region where women are facing declining employment rates, literally from 66% in 1991 to 58% in 2020. And in India, the decline is very steep. We currently are at 19 to 20% of women's participation in the labor force. And this despite, despite rising female education levels and falling fertility, which is really a matter of concern. Now, also the fact that women are overrepresented in informal employment and vulnerable employment. So more than 64% of employed women in the region are in vulnerable employment. And again, if I look at the statistics in India, over 90% of women are in informal employment. Also the fact that, you know, the gender gap in Asia is really 15%, impacting women's ability to invest in their businesses, in their families, in their communities, and the economy. And you have rightly mentioned that women, in Asian countries do up to 3.5% more unpaid care work than men. Now, if I talk about in India, you know, in the last few years, we have really witnessed a lot of progressive policies and programs and interventions. Now, so, you know, there have been directives removing restrictions from women's participation, say, for example, at work at night in factories. We have progressive legislation about addressing sexual harassment at workplace. We have policies now that promote women's maternity benefits and appointment of women in boards. But still, you know, what really matters is their effective implementation. So, you know, going forward, the focus should be on their effective implementation. But I also wanted to share is that you know, there has been an enhanced I'm losing the word. So what I wanted to share is that, you know, what is also heartening to know is that businesses are really becoming more conscious of the fact that gender equality has a business case. It makes economic sense. It's apart from the human rights. It has a sustainability argument to it as well. And to give an example, UN Women in Asia Pacific, we organized something called Women's Empowerment Principle Awards. And we received applications from over 400 corporates in the Asia Pacific region that demonstrated their efforts to enhance women's leadership and inclusion and diversity in the corporate sector. So these solutions range from really addressing the wage gap to really trying to address the issues of sexual harassment at workplace, making sure that women's participation is at least 50% at all levels, not only at the senior management, but at different managerial roles as well. And also the community interventions that are addressing the structural constraints in women's participation in the workforce.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think I would like to hand it over to Shuyin, also because I know that for the Beacon Fund, you're also targeting women entrepreneurs that, for example, work in more informal sectors, or at least not in the traditional tech sectors that you would usually look for as a VC investor.
Yeah, I mean, I think, maybe first responding to the question of, how are we seeing this kind of this dialogue and evolve, and also what's been the actual results. I do see a difference, I think in the conversation versus where we were about five years ago, right? I think I definitely agree there's a long way to go and many challenges, but I think, just thinking back to, say, the conversations we were having yesterday around International Women's Day, right? I mean, I think that there is, a whole new level of, awareness that this is an important issue. And I think more importantly, it's, and Suhela also mentioned this too, right? It's not just about, human rights, or, it's not just a women's issue, but it's actually a business as well as an investment issue. And I think, that is, big progress in my mind, right? And it really, I think investors are beginning to see that, if I want to make the best investment decisions, if I want to attract the best talent to my team, right, and build the best companies, this is something I should be paying attention to, right? And it doesn't mean, you only have to invest in female entrepreneurs, but I think it means you can take a kind of a holistic approach, right, to including gender as a consideration as you source companies, as you do due diligence, as you sit on the board of these portfolio companies, right? And have gender as a really important consideration there. So I think in that way, I've seen that gender lens investing is moving outside of its maybe little niche, right? And becoming a little bit more mainstream and accessible, which in my mind is a really important and needed thing, right? At the same time, institutional investors are beginning to commit large sums of funding towards, or investment capital, right, towards gender lens investing, and are beginning to ask the questions, right? Because I think, it takes time to shift an entire portfolio, but at least now they're like, oh, that's interesting. How many of my fund managers do, include, say, diverse teams, right? Or, what is the gender composition of my portfolio? I think, getting that data, and I think sometimes being surprised by that data is a good place to start. So I think that's kind of more the state of the field, and I'm not sure whether now's a good time to chat a bit about the Beacon Fund, or maybe save that for a future snippet.
Perfect. We'll have another question on investment specifically.
Right.
So I would ask Mint the same question to you. How do you see the developments in the past few years?
Very, very tough questions. I've only been in this space for, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 years. So I'll answer from my, very minute experience. I think behind every endeavor, particularly in entrepreneurship, it's very challenging that you need support along the way, mentally, especially, not just financially, but, there could be tough roads ahead, and you don't know what tools you would need to actually get through it. I think the most fundamental unit is really family when it comes down to that kind of support. So I wouldn't claim that, of course, societal support, the whole ecosystem support is very important. It's great when you have groups to go to, friends to talk to, when you face problems oh, I got turned down by this person without even just, I felt so embarrassed. I felt intimidated in front of these like kind of certain groups of people that makes me feel inferior. So having that type of support is very crucial, but at the same time, like we need to come back to ourselves to really understand where we stand as a person. I think that sense of gender equality, it goes away when we're actually looking at us as an individual human beings. So to be listened to in a very serious way instead of I myself have actually faced a lot of sexual harassment, even assault, and I know what it feels like and how that really destroy your sense of dignity in a person. So, but eventually the strongest unit is yourself. You need to find that center in you and to define that this is who you are and no one can take it away from you. And I totally appreciate like a lot of support from my family, from my husband, from my friends, my girlfriends, and those who've been through similar experiences. So I think it's everything helps us develop into a character that makes us stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, that type of thing. In terms of entrepreneurship ecosystem, though, I see there's a lot of gathering in Thailand related to like funding for females, the movement, She Loves Tech. Seedstars also has like really great support group in across like female entrepreneurs as well. So finding your friends who could understand that challenges, because a lot of the times it's really, I don't know, I feel like it's a lot of time it's in our head too. But a lot of the things could be real, but that might not have been intentional by someone. It could be the lack of access to education across like female founders that makes us less kind of likely to be in connection with those who could give more funding. So we're seeing the results, but we're not seeing the costs, and attributing the result to a certain kind of prejudice, I think could be seen a little bit unfair. But we understand the current situation and we try to empower ourselves to move forward from that point of view. That's kind of my take on it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that actually also brings me to my next question. And you've mentioned quite a few, but I would leave the question with you, Mint, if that's all right. So as you mentioned already, women entrepreneurs do face quite a bit of a challenge, and basically all of them are worth tackling. But if we had to prioritize, or let's say pick just a few that are really important for us to tackle soon, the sooner the better, which are the challenges that you would choose that could support female entrepreneurs in the ecosystem and in their development the best?
Tough question. I need a minute to kind of digest that. I'll just like blast out what I think are the key challenges. Maybe prioritization will come along the way. I think being seen as like someone who's serious about what we do, and sometimes I've seen like female entrepreneurs pitching for their ideas about like sanitary like pads, and then like even one of the investor who's female was like, yeah, nobody funds femtech anymore. That's very discouraging, because honestly, like you don't know what the evolution of a startup would become, right? she might end up doing something along that line, but through encouragement, she could flourish. She could become one of the most driving entrepreneurs. You never know, and that goes the same with male as well, right? So I think being listened to without having that kind of judgment that this is like male stuff, this is female stuff, and it's very important. But it's hard to say because we grow up differently, each one of us. Experiences define us. Past biases have kind of block our view in certain ways. This female entrepreneur came to talk to me. And she was like, yeah, I feel very terrible about what this investor said. And I told her that, do not let that take any value like away from her. Even though, looking from a business perspective, I think she has something in there, but it's not like the thing that currently is, which is true for every early stage startups, right? You start from something and then you constantly work on it until it becomes what you want it to be, and it has like market response and things like that. So I think this is the first one, is to be listened to in a very like serious way, and not judgmental. And then I think second one is probably access to network, maybe even because we want to destroy this, like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, same way as gender equality, right? The males get more connections where females don't. Then we have to really build a very strong network of access of these networks that it's almost like a privilege that's only shared with females, to kind of counterbalance that. Those are the two I could think of. If anything comes to mind, I probably should shut up because it gets harder as you say more for other people. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I just maybe want to pick up on what something that Mint said, which I think resonated with me around this idea of really being, listened to. And I think for me, I realized this. I guess I thought of it a bit differently, but I think maybe it's the same kind of gem of true truth in there, which is to really maybe change what's valued sometimes, right? Because I think what's valued in the entrepreneurship scene right now, and I think this is in many ways the genesis of Beacon, our newest fund, is, I think what's out there is this idea of an entrepreneur as somebody who can, build $1 billion company, right? Really scale it, and raise a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, if you step back a little bit, that's not actually what entrepreneurship is about, right? Necessarily, it doesn't have to be. Entrepreneurship could be about bringing, a much needed product, right, to a market that needs it. Obviously generating a great business model around that and growing, right? But we noticed a lot in the conversation, right, that what was valued was really this idea of, becoming a unicorn or like closing your Series D or something like this. And that's great, right? I think we should definitely celebrate those companies which are on those paths. But I think we should also recognize that there are many paths to entrepreneurial success. And I've always kind of felt, I also felt like uncomfortable when people would refer to certain businesses as, oh, that's just a lifestyle business, right? In a very, again, like quite a demeaning way, right? When I'm like, oh, it's a great business, right? It generates X million dollars of net profit every year and is actually meeting the needs of this group of particular people, right? Or this segment. That's an exciting business. So I think, again, as an investor, right, I think, looking beyond just this one path to being a successful entrepreneur and really recognizing that there's many ways to be successful, I think is one challenge. I think, we need to change our mindsets, or I hope we can change our mindsets in that way. And it really just struck me as Mint was speaking. I think maybe the second challenge, just very quickly, is, I think obviously, I think we're still grappling with the effects of COVID. It's still very real. And I think that did exacerbate the funding gap in many ways, because I think in times of challenge, in times of risk, it's very easy to revert to what you know, right? And your familiar networks, your familiar crew, you know, and I think in these environments, it is hard for, I guess, you know, diverse or different, you know, types of entrepreneurs to get funding and different business models, right? Tackling, you know, challenges which people might not perceive as the norm. So that's just a few quick thoughts on that.
Thank you. And I will pick exactly from where you left, Shuyin, is also the reflecting on the current environment, which is pandemic, right? We know that both businesses by women and men have been affected, right? But there are certain disadvantages that women face being women, such as, you know, lack of access to collateral or lack of access to markets, financial capitals, including land and property, but also access to networks, as Mint very rightly pointed out. You know, these create additional barriers for women. And we did one survey with really 105 women entrepreneurs to really see that how COVID-19 has impacted, you know, women-led businesses. And we found that, you know, of course, there is a greater need of working capital at this point of time. But what they are grappling with is really the dual responsibility of managing house as well as their business, but also the lack of access to mentorship and network. Now, the thing is that the networks, as Mint rightly pointed out, and this was really prioritized. Even they were not looking at working capital as much as they're looking at mentors and networks who are able to provide them, you know, specific support to pivot, hear from them in a non-judgmental environment where they are comfortable to bounce back their ideas to the peer community. So that is what exactly they're looking at this point of time, and you know, and facing challenges. And third thing which they are also looking is access to, of course, the markets, because we know that, you know, the scenario of market has completely changed. A lot of businesses have now gone to e-commerce platforms, and of course, women's historical disadvantage of lack of access to digital assets or digital literacy have also impacted, you know, the way men are handling, you know, access to markets completely different as women are handling right now. So these are some of the challenges that women are really facing at this point of time. Women entrepreneurs are facing at this point of time.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, to summarize, I think access to mentors, access to network, and of course, fundraising and access to finance has been mentioned quite a bit. So I would actually ask another question about the current investment landscape within the region and how you see the investment landscape. So either so either did you see any changes in the investment landscape over the last years, or how do you yourself experience the investment landscape in Southeast Asia at the moment?
Yeah, I guess I can begin here. So it's been really fascinating, right? I mean, to see, you know, I think if we're talking about venture capital and private equity style investments, which I guess we are in this case, you know, it's been really fascinating to see that kind of grow, right? From a very, you know, small and negligible amount, you know, back, say 10 years ago. And I guess, you know, this is where maybe where my Vietnam hat a little bit, right? You know, you could literally count the number of venture capital firms on one hand, right? You know, 8 to 10 years ago. Now it looks very, very different, right? So on, you know, one could say that there's a lot of capital, you know, flowing into this market. I think there's more funds, you know, being raised than ever before for Southeast Asia. There's more dry powder, so that is, you know, unspent or uninvested capital, right, sitting around than ever before. And you know, funding round sizes are getting larger, and you know, and you know, I think you really do feel a significant difference in I guess investment volume, velocity, size than you might have seen, you know, 5-10 years ago. How did COVID affect this? Well, you know, definitely, I think early, you know, for say the first half of last year, investors did take a step back and really concentrate on their existing portfolios and, you know, really like turn the tap off making fresh investments for at least kind of, you know, up till Q2, Q3, right? As they were waiting to see what would really happen and play out. But I think to be honest, I was still surprised by how strong the venture capital and private equity market continued through 2020, and how robust valuations were by the same token. And what has this meant for women entrepreneurs? I think particularly, that's been an interesting thing, right? Because I think on the one hand, you see more capital than ever in at least our region, this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, but we didn't actually see the funding gap closing, right? So I think that to the best of our knowledge and the data available, we didn't actually see that the funding gap was narrowing for female entrepreneurs, despite more capital being available than ever before. And it was ultimately this realization for us, which made us realize that what are we missing here, right? This doesn't seem to make either people are like very, very biased, right? Or and that is a challenge, right? But I think what we also realized was that venture capital and private equity is just one particular type of funding source, right? And entrepreneurs do actually need access to diverse sets of capital, which do not necessarily fit into the venture capital private equity wheelhouse. It could be forms of private debt, right? It could be new innovative financing mechanisms such as revenue-based financing. It could be short-term working capital loans. I mean, there's actually like many different funding sources needed to actually back a successful business. Yet I think a lot of the focus and conversation has been around venture capital and private equity. So I think looking at the investment landscape, I think it made us realize that there's a significant concentration in this area. How do we actually bring different sources, different types of funding to the table, right? And I think that's an interesting thing that I think not just we are working on, but I think other funds, other alternative lenders, alternative finance companies. It's interesting to see. I think still very early days, but it's great to see that there's beginning to be more options in the market, apart from raising your seed equity round and going from there, which I think is important to really close the funding gap from a capital access financing perspective.
I can pick up from where Shuyin left. So I have something interesting to share. So in 2020, or rather 2019-2020, we conducted a survey in 7 WeEmpowerAsia program countries, right? And as well as countries including EU. And what we found is that the 29% of women entrepreneurs faced gender-based discrimination in accessing finance. There were quotes from women entrepreneurs who said that, one of the potential investors said that you are too nice and this is not enough to run a company, right? So what we have also realized that, there are non-important dimensions comes to play when it comes to funding women entrepreneurs, right? And that is something which we really need to work on. Now, what the good news is that 79% of investors also said that they wanted to learn to ensure that there is no discrimination and there is an equal opportunity when it comes to funding to women entrepreneurs. But the situation is that currently, if you would look at the Asia and emerging markets, women make up between 7 to 15% of senior investment professionals. Why does it matter? It matters because if research indicates that if there are limited number of women in senior investment roles, then there would be a gender imbalance in investment teams, which will influence the gender imbalance in portfolio companies as well. And so what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to gender lens investing, there is a critical need to make sure that women professionals are there in the senior management roles in investment companies to at least close the gap that she just mentioned. Thank you.
So do I need to add to that? I think both of them have said really amazing things already. I myself have been very lucky in getting kind of exposure to the network of potential investors, and but although, I've faced some challenges as well when talking to, so angel investors, that's the round that we got. And it was kind of like pre-seed round. When I was trying to raise seed, we kind of went to more like VCs and private equity type of investment. And I think maybe through introductions, we weren't really, there were cases when I felt that I haven't really explained my ideas, that I was, kind of didn't have that opportunity. But, I just try to not look at it that way and then just continue on because I've only seeing from my own perspective. I'm not like seeing from like kind of like a wider range of perspectives of what it's like in the whole entire landscape. But yeah, so definitely like I felt that there could potentially be more opportunities for me to talk to investors. And I think this, for one thing that's kind of unintentional, was that these events sometimes happen when I have to tend to my daughter. Like I have to like take her to bed. I can't join like 7 p.m. meeting type of thing. And I don't think it was intentional, which is like the whole thing was structured that way from I don't know when. But yeah, it was supposed to be like after work type of thing. When my after work, it's actually like 9 p.m. When she goes to bed already. Yeah, so that could be a challenge as well. So I'll just stop there for my part.
Mint, if I may, and I completely empathize what you are trying to say. Women unfortunately have to make a choice, between either this or that, which fortunately or unfortunately man doesn't have to do, right? So I know that this is really important, and perhaps these are some of the structural constraints that we need to address. This is something which is experienced by all women working professionals out there. So we really need to invest in trying to create those opportunities, in trying to create an enabling environment to really ensure that these things are part of women's life and they cannot be taken away. And therefore, our environment should be such that facilitates women's opportunities, taking into consideration all these structural constraints that women have to face.
That will be amazing. Like, yeah, I felt very conflicted many times. I have to make that choice. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's the classical, the structure that was set in stone years ago and that never really changed. And now that a bit more diversity is coming into the ecosystem, I think those structures need to change and to adapt as well to the needs of the people that are part of this ecosystem and that are building the ecosystem. So definitely agree with those points mentioned. Okay, so now we've talked a lot about the challenges that women entrepreneurs face. So I would like to turn to the positive. And I would like to ask if you have seen some concrete initiatives or you yourself are running some concrete initiative to support women entrepreneurs that you would like to mention now.
I can try.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Mint.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I try to make myself available to be I don't want to say mentor, but just as a friend for female entrepreneurs who wanted to vent out their emotions on like the, just running a company. How do I stand out there and inspire people in my company? How do I create vision? How do I face this like self-doubt that's within, but at the same time be able to like inspire others? How can I respond to comments that might not be very positive about starting my own company? Like, why there's certain societal prejudice. I don't know, maybe I don't want to generalize, but maybe in some of the developing countries, that there are certain roles that females need to fulfill, and why you're doing this, causing burden to your husband, things like that. So I try to be there and be that support from my friends. So I think to and then join like all these like amazing networks of female entrepreneurs, female investors, and then contribute in any way that I can.
Okay, yeah, to pick up what you said, yes, of course, we need a lot of role models, out there, because that enables confidence, and that enables hope in women out there to see that, okay, we can also do something. And of course, your idea of just supporting one more woman is excellent. If we all, make this promise to ourselves that we will go ahead and support one woman in any which way, just to give a lend, just to be there, listening and bouncing back ideas, I think that is really a space that we need to create. But what I would also like to share here at this platform is one of the interventions that we have undertook together with the Government of India and UNDP, something called Investor Consortium Platform. And I do hope, that the people out there would take hint from this idea and see if they can implement in their respective countries as well. So what we did is that we created a consortium of investors. They were, ranging from angel investors to venture capitalists and others as well. And the idea was that, sometimes what they say is that we do not have enough pipeline. There are not enough out there for us to invest in a critical mass, in a businesses that are viable. So what we did is that together with the WeEmpower platform of women's entrepreneurship platform of Niti Aayog, Government of India, we launched a call for application from women entrepreneurs to submit their solutions and business ideas. And then we matched them to the requirements of the investors. And we created cohorts of women whose ideas we found that are aligned to the requirement of investors. And then we undertook like a 2 months of really training and capacity building of women. You mentioned the fact that, you don't know sometimes how to approach an investor, or a lot of women don't know how to make an effective pitch. Or really to say that how well articulated they are when they are presenting their business ideas. Also trying to focus on which aspect they should be focusing on, what should their projection like, and all that. So what we did is that we really invested in 2 months on their building their capacities and made them ready to pitch their ideas to investors, and really organized one-on-one meetings with the investors where women entrepreneurs were pitching their ideas to investors. So I think this is one thing which we did to really create that platform, because really no platforms exist where women are able to come forward, identify investors, and pitch their business ideas. So that is one intervention from WeEmpowerAsia to really facilitate women's access to finance. There is another intervention, Dory, and I can mention it right now, but see if we would like to retain it in our larger conversation, because, and that is also important to talk about, which is called an industry disruptor. Now, what we also realized is the fact that, women entrepreneurs, for some reason, are not able to access the value chains of larger corporations. Right? I mean, there are a lot of women MSMEs that they produce a lot of things, but they are not into the value chains of larger corporations. So for that, we launched something called Industry Disruptor. Now, what this entailed was that we onboarded, and this was specifically in the textile sector, we onboarded brands such as H&M and Chibo. And the idea was to work with them to find out that what are their brand specific sustainability challenges. They listed a few, and then we again launched a call of applications for women entrepreneurs who submitted their ideas. We undertook a boot camp of 20 women entrepreneurs whom we thought that their ideas are really credible enough to be upscaled. And then together with the industry partners, we went for a week-long boot camp where these women entrepreneurs co-created the solutions together with brands their sustainability challenges. And some of these solutions are now being considered by these brands to be upscaled as part of their value chains. So what I'm trying to say here again is that, and one of the reflections that we had from women entrepreneurs is that, okay, how do we find access to larger corporations? And so the representative from one of the brands responded to say that, by platforms like these. So we realized that there are not enough even platforms to be able to link women entrepreneurs when they are trying to find market in larger corporations. So I think that is, this intervention really created that platform for women. So I'll stop here.
It's really wonderful, Suhela. I'm looking through the WeEmpowerAsia website right now. Thank you for the info.
I mean, I think we're getting a little short on time, so let me just be super brief. And I think in terms of concrete practical initiatives, I mean, this was a very interesting journey for us, and it started, I think, 4 years ago, and we literally took apart our entire investment process and thought about, okay, where might gender play a role here, right? And what are we going to do about it in a very practical, concrete, tangible way? And it's interesting. I mean, back to the previous discussion we had about, when are events scheduled, right? Is that an accessible time for people who have, caregiving responsibilities, et cetera? That was actually something that we discussed, right? So we were looking at our pipeline development phase, right? And we were, thinking, what are the events that we attend, right? What are the events that we host? What are the media outlets that we, that we communicate through? And are these, accessible to women entrepreneurs as well as male entrepreneurs? And so we did kind of a bit of a, an audit. I mean, that's maybe not the right word, but we did look at, how we were actually sourcing pipeline and really being more intentional about reaching a diverse set of entrepreneurs through that process. And, I think we also had to have a good hard look at, the way that we conducted our investment process, where unconscious bias might come in. And I think as the female, and I think it came up before, right? Even a female investor can have her own unconscious biases around, around investing in female entrepreneurs, right? So I think it did apply actually to everyone in our team, both the men and the women. And we had to really start that dialogue and begin to challenge each other, right? Are we describing this entrepreneur as, she's a bit, aggressive? Is that the right word actually? I mean, would we describe it as different in a man? So I think going through that process and having those discussions as we conduct our due diligence processes, I think that was, I think it's hard to describe sometimes because it's not like a single moment and then everything was fixed. I think there's no magic wand you can wave here, I would have to say. But as an investor, it was really going through that process, and which we are still today, right? Of how do we actually craft, a more an investment process which promotes gender equality and remove some of these biases. I think so that's been our journey.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's also a very, very important process to go through, which actually leads me to my last kind of question or suggestion. I would like for you to have a call to action to your fellow peers, so fellow supporters, fellow funders, fellow entrepreneurs. What do you believe they can do to support female entrepreneurship and a more diverse and a more just ecosystem in general?
I can take that. Okay, go ahead, Mint.
No. I stole this.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
No, Suhela, go first.
Okay. What I really wanted to say to our fellow travelers in this journey to promote women's entrepreneurship is that there is a need to create an enabling environment. There is a need to understand that women face gender division of labor. There is a need for them to recognize and appreciate the fact that unconscious biases play a very subtle role when it comes to the opportunities that women deal with and try to try to adopt. So what we really need is to work on creating an enabling environment where we empower women and to recognize and appreciate the role models out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Suhela. I wanted to share that, like a forum like this, it's really there to encourage and inspire female entrepreneurs out there. And if you really wanted to support, I think one of the ways to support is to show appreciation. Appreciation to those who have supported in very either big or small ways, behind, there was a saying, right, by Franklin Roosevelt, that behind every great man, there's a great woman. I actually want to reverse that. So behind every great woman, there's a great man. I think the continuous support from your family, from people around you, like every single person, has inspired you to become like who you are. So appreciate everything that has crafted that experience for you. I think that's one of the ways to really to show others that there's a path towards a brighter future and a happy one as well. Yeah. So all for appreciation.
Yeah, I think for entrepreneurs or anyone really, I think I definitely second what's been said around finding a support network, right? I mean, I think that's been so important, even for myself in kind of my own journey. For the investors, my call to action would be to, I think first, like, get the data, right? Maybe it will surprise you. Get the gender disaggregated data on your portfolio and your portfolio companies, and I think begin asking these questions. And I think once you begin doing that, and I think you see the results, I think often it sets in train this process of asking, like, oh, really? Like only 10% of the applications that we receive involve a diverse founding team, right? Why is that, right? Well, what are we missing here, right? And not just because I think at the end of the day, you are missing opportunities if you are not looking for, not including female entrepreneurs, not looking for diverse founding teams, and or not looking for companies which are serving the female segment, right? Which is a very fast growing one and an incredible economic opportunity. So I think from whichever perspective that you look at it, I think people often see women as kind of like really narrowing, as a niche, as like narrowing the sphere. I actually see it as really capturing the full opportunity out there, and I think that's maybe the note that that I would like to leave on.
I just wanted to add to what Mint said. Mint, I would further like to go ahead with your quote to say that, behind every successful woman, there are a lot of other women as well, as your friends, as your sisters, as your mother. So let's remain inspired from all of them.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Suhela, Shuyin, and Mint, for this super fruitful discussion, and also for your last calls to action. To summarize, we've spoken a lot about the challenges that women entrepreneurs face, such as access to finance, access to networks, and sometimes the appreciation for what they do. But also we spoke about the potential they represent for creating sustainable economic development. So I hope that all the participants that have joined today will leave this virtual session inspired to take actions towards more equitable and just environments. And I thank everyone for joining us today.